The girl got into the virtual world. Her real body can die of starvation, so the girl is looking for a way to escape from this world, but he is dangerous, and if she sleeps with the main character of the game, she will never come back in her life. But the temptation is too great. Watch till the end to find out what happens next. Subscribe to the channel for my efforts. In the middle of the mountains stood the quiet, dead, and isolated village of Dover. But no one knows about the secret of this village. In this village, people were injured when they tried to catch the monster, but after several failed attempts, they abandoned this job. Or people who lived on farms and looked after their animals could also suffer many injuries. All the people in the village, in one way or another, needed help of any kind, medical, psychological, physical. But one charming girl found a way out for all these people. She stood in the middle of the town square and said, "Everyone, please come to Dover Pharmacy." People began to come and drink the potion. It helped people get the desired strength and energy for work. They felt twice as strong. One day, Miss Apothecary was approached by a local journalist. "Miss Apothecary, what is your secret to creating such a potion?" The girl hid her face under her hood, but she remained silent for a while before speaking.
Looking at the journalist, she said, "Despite the difficulties, I'm always inspired by the thought of people's health and their achievements thanks to my medicine."
For Miss Aptekar, health was in the first place, because it is the main happiness for a doctor. Listening to this, the journalist quickly wrote something down in a notebook and then asked, "You stuttered? Are you really nervous? I heard that the secret ingredient is only available here, right?" Miss Apothecary pointed to the flower and said, "Here's the secret ingredient. It's mandrake." The boy immediately fell to his knees in front of the flower to pluck it with the words, "You mean this flower has such a great effect on people?" Miss Apothecary replied, "If you pull it out then." However, the journalist did not listen to Miss and plucked the mandrake flower. After a second, he heard the peculiarity of this flower. Because it was very dangerous because of its cry, it screamed to protect itself from enemies. All people felt this terrible scream. People wanted to forget what happened and continue life normally as before. However, suddenly the girl realized that the place where she was not reality. Surprised by her guess, the girl Shari Azriel stood with a sword in her hands. After killing the mandrake, she realized what she was finding in the game Save the Earth. A pharmacist who gave an interview for a journalist, that strange guy with a notebook in his hands. There was Shari Azriel. Above her head, Shara had her name Dover Village Apothecary NPC. This game has the best MMORPG rendering system among modern virtual reality games. Users could fight monsters using characters that were trained by Shai. They also made the usually simple quests more dynamic by adding more deviations. This is a game with a plot and quests where the player needs to save the world, which is on the verge of destruction. Such games are rare. What made the game the biggest focus is the total virtual reality system. Wearing the VR system, everyone can see and feel the fantastic world of this game. They can become heroes who go on a grand adventure. Realistic graphics made the game look like the real world. There were only positive reviews from users. However, even though it was a beta test, the servers were damaged and the game was out of order for several days. People have lost their rewards due to server errors and system issues and bugs. Due to the overly advanced AI training system, there were no patterns, and users couldn't find a way to protect themselves, due to which many players struggled to complete the beta. But everyone who tried to do it failed and got an error message. That's why this game is just a widely discussed rumor without any official launch. Another error occurred on the server, which made the heads of the employees boil. The working day has already ended long ago, because the clock is almost 11 in the evening and it is also Friday. The girl was responsible for receiving bug reports from players and resolving their complaints. The main task was to connect the characters to the game and see how they work in the game. However, these errors were already so annoying. The girl got up from her workplace and moved to another with the words, "I've already corrected this mistake times. Isn't it time for the mistakes to end? What a mistake this time. I can't imagine it anymore." With a laugh, she sat down in her chair and said, "Ordinary workers have to follow their boss's orders no matter what. There's nothing you can do about it. Working from home is great." After wearing the VR equipment, Azriel saw the announcement. Warning: long hours of gaming can cause mental and physical damage. It can have a bad effect on your daily life. Shari opened the game to fix the bug, but she didn't know what would happen next. Bright colors greeted the girl in the game. Again, this is a quiet place. This village, this journalist, these people. There were markings above the journalist's head, namely Redator Damien. The girl was annoyed by the thought that she was in the game. And she was even more annoyed by the time above her head, which showed years in the game. although only hours had passed in the real world. Lowering her head, she thought, 2 years? I've been playing this game for 2 whole years? She screamed, "This is just crazy, and now I am sorry!" These scary thoughts began to haunt her. Shari didn't think that she had wasted 2 years in this game. 2 years in this game is equal to hours in real life. By not very complicated calculations, it was possible to understand that now it was Saturday night in the real world. Next came the realization that the real body had been inside the VR equipment all day. To save herself, Shari opened the menu and clicked on the exit button. However, she was shown error. You cannot exit the game at this time due to an unknown error. Shari Azriel started screaming, "This is horrible! What? Why is this a bug?" She was thinking, then how am I going to get out of here? If someone in real life can remove the equipment from me, then I might be able to leave this incredibly annoying place. However, the girl lived alone and had no family, so she had no one to remove the equipment, especially being online is like work. So even colleagues will not notice anything strange. However, what will happen to the body in real time? The girl realized that she had been starving for hours, if not more. Terrible thoughts began to fill her head and scare the girl. Finally realizing that this was a game, Shari tried everything to return to the real world. But first, she must find the nearest NPC to report the error. This damn game, under the guise of backstories, built its bug reporting system through the NPC, not the UI. However, Shari shouted, "Report a problem! However, I am the only NPC here. I came to Count Hale's estate in a nearby Spuove to report a bug. However, it was impossible to contact technical support staff during non-working hours. The second attempt is to die from monster attacks." A message appeared in front of my eyes. "You died and could not prevent the destruction of the world. Would you like to start over?" Shari looked at the monster and thought, if a character dies, a window appears, and you can end the game. That will bring me back to my world. But it can be painful because you're in VR. Still, Shari saw no other way out, so she mentally said goodbye to the game. A status message appeared before his eyes. Health dropped below %. He will be automatically summoned to the starting point, Dover Village. Shari screamed and fell to the ground saying, "Due to my health dropping below %, I was automatically dropped to a familiar village." In Shari's opinion, for a damn game full of bugs, this game works well. However, to get out of this game, Azriel Shari went to a hopeless method. The woman stood on the edge and said, "They have me. I was automatically recalled because my health was going down too slowly. Although if my health increases a lot in one go, it might work." Of course, falling from such a height was a little frightening, but there was no way out. In order to return to reality, you need to look for all possible ways. Shara's legs quickly pushed off the edge, and the character flew down shouting, "It's just game graphics." The girl suddenly felt a sharp pain in her head. It was not sharp, but it was very unpleasant. Shari said, "This time I got in the way of the terrain boundary and was pushed back onto the rock by the transparent barrier. These attempts were already very annoying, and Shari was already tired of these senseless attempts. She threw up her hands and screamed with all her might, "Why the damn character can't die?" However, the girl did not care. She tried again and again. Motivation was boiling in her, and she was ready with all her might to return to the real world. Shari continued to walk from Dover Village to Earl Hav's estate every day to wake them up with spam. The angel who received this spam was also not happy with so many messages per day. One day, after spending 2 months in the game repeating the same thing every day, the girl received a response from the moderator Ari saying, "Congratulations, you announced that the game should be, right?" From happiness, Shari started to cry and shout, "Yes, yes!" This angelic man was like a robot through which messages could be transmitted. Shari began to shake him and cry in his face. She hoped that this manager Ari could help her get out of this stupid game now. The warm hopes gradually calmed Shari Azriel and gave her hope for the best. However, Ari replied, "Oh really? You see, you were scared because you couldn't disconnect from the game, dear adventurer." In the most calm tone, Shari answered, "I'm scared? Are you making fun of me? I'm stuck in the game. I'm not even a user. Can't you see I'm a character? I got stuck here when I came to work." Moderator Ari began to search for information and check Shari's identity to verify the girl's words. Ari said, "You are connected to Dover Village, Pharmacy, Shari Azriel. After checking, it appears that an error occurred when you restricted access to our verification server. I'm sorry." Ari offered to wait a while to call her assistance, but Shari said, "Exactly not. I have been waiting for an answer for 2 months. More than hours have passed in real time. Ari started writing in response to the girl's screams. These long dots really annoyed her. And then Ari suggested, "How about I send an employee to your address to remove the VR equipment?" Shari screamed, "Great! Please send it immediately!" The girl began to be very happy, but she was sure that now she is saved and will be able to live a peaceful life. However, the girl's expectations were too high. A few minutes later, Ari started writing, "Hi, Miss Shari, sorry for the wait." Shari started to ask about the news, but Ari replied, "I'm sorry, I have bad news for you." This conversation completely shattered Shari's expectations. What was the problem? In that Shari's house was completely empty. Miss Shari was not in her room, not in the kitchen, not even in the bathroom. The company's outfit was searched everywhere, just in case. They even went to the office where Shari worked to find her, but Miss Shari was nowhere to be found. Ari asked if Shari was connecting from another location. Maybe that was the problem. However, Shari began to think, if I was neither at home nor at the office, where else could I be? Because I've been in the game for so long, I can't remember anything? But the girl couldn't die by being caught in this game. So she said, "Then please at least help file a missing person report. I have no family members who could file a missing person report." However, Ari replied, "I'm sorry, but the current Korean legal system only allows relatives to report a missing person." Ari said, "Don't worry, the team will soon track your whereabouts through our closed company system." Shari asked, "How long can this take?" Ari replied, "It might take about 2 days real time." However, Shari became very angry and shouted, "2 days? 2 days are hours? A person can die if he doesn't eat anything for hours, and it has already passed over hours." Ari replied, "Miss Shari, a person can't easily die because they haven't eaten for hours." Shari yelled, "What are you messing with me?" She fell to her knees and said, "This is all because of your damn game. Why did you update everything again? You are an incompetent manufacturer. Terrible!" Ari asked Miss Shari to calm down for her own good, and that's when she got an idea. Ari said, "We need something to help us get out of the game for real." Tears were already streaming down Shari's cheeks, but she saw what Ari had prepared for her. Because the situation is urgent, Ari assembled an entire production team to create Shari's personal chat. This group is designed to watch Shari in real time, without having to contact Angela or wait for a response from any moderator on our server. Shari sat down on the floor and said, "Stop this nonsense and hurry up and get me out of here." Other moderators began to resent this attitude. They tried to help, but they did not like Shari's bad mood and took it as an insult. Ari interrupted everyone in the group and said, "Miss Shari, we're going to find a way to get you out of here within goals of a heated encounter." Ari still wanted to write something, but she wrote for a very long time. For several minutes, everyone sat waiting for an answer. Suddenly, one of the moderators said to the genie, "You'll be writing at this rate all day. Let me tell her." Jinu wrote, "It's simple. You just have to complete the game within hours if you get to the end. Won't you be automatically logged in?" Shari seemed to believe in this plan, but she needed to think things through. The girl remembered how she solved the problems in the question, "Dear hero, do not let the Lord of Nightmares sleep." This evil silhouette of a man appeared before his eyes. Shari thought, doesn't that mean I have to meet that main character with a terrible personality? The protagonist of the game, Save the Earth, is the crown prince of the Cassel Empire, Ludwig. When he was a child, he was cursed. Nightmares that visualize the end and destruction of the whole world. All his fears were in his dreams. The dream was black and white, but very realistic. All of them were destined to become a reality. Emperor Ludwig, the Arstarats and the ministers banded together to lift the curse from Cassel and protect the world. However, the terrible nightmare could not be prevented from becoming a reality. Since then, this little guy has been called the Lord of Nightmares. Everyone made fun of him because they heard that this boy could cause a lot of problems. Later, Cassel, who was considered dangerous, was sent far away to the village so as not to harm the people around him. The story of the game starts there. The user gets a mission, which is to prevent the Master of Nightmares from falling asleep. Users tend to think that the characters never die. So they attack Cassel with the most important means, however. When this happens over and over again, it leads to that Cassel violently attacks the user, possibly killing him. There was even a period when several users were killed by him. It was close to the number of users who died from monsters, but Shari was an NPC, so unlike the others, she did not die, but simply teleported to the Dover glass. Shari has returned to Dover where her character was assigned, but what if it lasts hours? Suddenly, the news flashed on the main screen. The presenter said, Recently, the game has attracted attention due to VR technology, but a year-old girl was found dead in her home because after spending a lot of time playing the game, she died of malnutrition. Be careful. Seeing this news, Shari shouted, "No, I can't die as a gambler!" Shari said, "Get me out immediately. I can't die like this. Delete this character." Ari replied, "Unfortunately, we cannot remove valuable characters at will." Shari asked, "What happens if a person trapped in the game wants to get out? Will it break the game? Besides, I'm an NPC. How am I even supposed to play this game? Did you go completely crazy there?" The moderator said to Jim, "You can't miss the tutorial. Why all the fuss?" And Ari added, "Miss Merv, you can watch the previous tutorials in the progress story here." Shari very quickly opened her tutorial base and laughed out loud, and then said, "And that's what you call progress?" Ari suggested checking the recording of the second part of the game, and Shari ran to open it. There was a tab, completed the tutorial. You must stop the Nightmare Lord. Everyone was hustling and shouting, "Where's the NPC? The Master of Nightmares has arrived from the capital." Everyone started asking to open the door, while Shari stood in the corner and watched it. She looked at them with disgust and thought, "These disgusting creatures." Looking at her husband, she said in her mind, "The fact that you are malt does not give you the right not to thank me for the fact that I put effort into creating the potion. Don't think that I will let you find me so easily." One guy went around the corner and yelled to a friend, "I bought 5 zills. Can I take some off the counter as a gift? Buy." Shari thought, considering how hard life is, isn't that too much? She continued thinking, "It won't work. I'll contact the team leader later. But whether I get scolded or not, I have to be out by then." Shari then said, "Before I lose it, I'll give the potion to the poor main character." Shari was crazy, so she threw her potion right at the criminal. However, it seemed to her that this choice would lead to good expectations. Then she felt the Nightmare Lord's gaze on her. Shari returned to reality, because these memories were only part of the tutorial, but her eyes remembered the evil look with which the man opened to Shari. The girl spread her arms and said, "Oh, I'm crazy!" Shari tearfully said, "I didn't think it would work out like this. Is there a way to get out in the end?" Ari replied, "Unfortunately, the Nightmare Lord has recognized Shari, so now disaster is imminent if you don't stop him." Shari said, "I can't get rid of the main character that easily. Unfortunately, this game cannot be completed without the main character to prevent a final disaster or a broken game." Shari faced a quest, the most terrible disaster, to defeat the last enemy and save the world. Shari shouted, "I'm going to have to help the main character. How can I beat a game that even pro gamers can't beat?" However, all the managers united and said in one voice, "Duba Shari, don't worry Shari, unlike the others, has us." One of the moderators said, "The sooner you get to the end of the quest, within hours, the easier it will be." Everyone supported Shari and said, "We will help you in everything to do it faster. You are a worker. Don't you know how to finish the quest?" "That, sir, you are immortal." Shari thought, long story short, they're saying that if they can't find a way to fix the bug, the only way to survive here is to beat the game. Shari said, "Although the trouble I have to go through is frustrating, if I keep crying, I'll just die within the next 2 days." Therefore, the girl, full of strength and motivation, almost opened the door and ran outside. As she ran down the street, she screamed, "Just no until I'm out of here. Hours is nothing if it means that I can escape from here." Before the girl stood the first quest, Haley's Mansion, to prevent the Lord of Nightmares from falling asleep, to prevent world catastrophes, and to prevent others from being infected with evil energy. Shari was walking down the street and thought, "Because the Nightmare Lord recognized me. In 3 days, disaster will happen." The Nightmare Lord was banished to Haley's estate this time. The girl looked at the house and thought, "Since they're making sure he doesn't sleep, I'm sure they're looking for an apothecary who can make a potion that causes insomnia." The apothecary very quickly found a quest that said, "Once the Nightmare Lord falls asleep and sees the nightmare, it will become reality and destroy the whole world. Don't let the Nightmare Lord sleep." Shari was happy, and I said, "I'm glad I remember the details correctly, but since I'm a pharmacist, I can go myself, right?" Ari suddenly confirmed Shari's words in the electronic window on the side. All the moderators said, "You don't need to go looking for an apothecary, because you are one. We stopped the activity of apothecaries in this village, so you are the only one here, so you can just enter the middle." The moderators also made sure that the chat window was hidden, because it could prevent Shari from completing the quest. Shari thanked for understanding and waited a few seconds. After the chat closed, the apothecary went into the middle. She approached the main gate, and there was a butler standing on the water who incredulously asked, "Who are you?" And Shari replied, "I heard you are looking for an apothecary." The guard looked incredulously at the girl who was hiding her face. Everyone started calling her a beggar and a slob, but she could hear their words. However, people suddenly realized that Shari, or the unknown apothecary, was the only one in the district, so they had to trust her. Dvoretsky ordered to follow him to the second floor. Shari noticed that the castle was very dark, with almost no candles or lanterns. Only a few places were barely lit by streetlights. There was something written on the wall, and she thought, "Are we still in the starting Kapaizad, or is level too much?" Shari wondered if there were other quests in the castle, but suddenly the inscription, "Level," an old chandelier that lost its light, appeared above the chandelier. It seems that no one has used this thing in quest before, Shari thought again, but the butler was already in a hurry to shout at her to move faster. Frightened by such an evil tone, the girl ran after her husband. The butler walked quietly and slowly to the door, and then knocked softly and said, "My lord, I have brought the one you were looking for." Shari entered the room, and the butler was watching her from behind the door. The girl stopped at the door and said, "Greetings, sir. My name is Shari Azriel. I am a pharmacist. I came here as soon as I heard that you were looking for a pharmacist." However, the man was just silent. Shari got very angry and thought, "God, he's rude too. What's wrong with the personalities, the characters in this game?" But no matter how much her husband annoys her, she is forced to behave decently and not make mistakes. Earl Adam Haley, Lord Haley, later known as the White-Robed Swordmaster, he is one of the main characters in the game, who, together with Castle Ludwig, tries to prevent the destruction of the world. The girl slowly approached Adam Haley's counter and thought, "I just need to show the image of a competent apothecary. Just take the potion. It will be more difficult to exit the game if something goes wrong." The man slowly picked up a piece of paper from his desk and said, "Did you say you were an apothecary? Shari Azriel?" Shari agreed and nodded her head, saying, "Yes, that's right." Adam raised his head slightly and asked in a suspicious tone, "How strange, you came alone." Shari stammered, "Well, I came alone." The girl thought, according to the game, the players have to convince the apothecary to go with them. The AI is not supposed to know about it. The fact that I came alone shouldn't make any sense, right? Adam was silent for a while, watching Shari's expression, and then said, "Judging by your expression, you are either a beggar or a witch." Suddenly, a window of the character's emotional state appeared next to Adam. Adam had it, "Adam Haley is suspicious of you." In the game, you can find out about the state of the character not only through his manner of communication, but also through the system window, but their sympathy is not numbers, so you will have to draw a conclusion from the dialogues. However, Shari realized that she made the most terrible impression on Adam, so now everything will not go according to the direct script. Suddenly, the butler began to grab Shari by the cloak and shout, "Take off the coat! Are you waiting for an invitation? Take off your coat already!" Shari actively resisted him, but thought, "Damn, he's very aggressive. Even though I look shabby, I can't take my hood off now." Due to the fact that Shari will walk without a hood, her beauty will stand out too much. Delicate skin, similar to porcelain, made by the masters of the Joseon dynasty, velvety hair like cherry blossom silk, misty purple eyes as if decorated with amethysts. All of these words are embellishments to describe Shari Azriel. This character has gone through the most effort to make her perfect in every way. Shari realized that it would be problematic if Adam fell in love with her, because he was supposed to be with him until the end of the game. Therefore, it was worth hurrying and changing the topic. The girl returned her bag with potions and said, "Here are all the potions that cause insomnia." She looked at Pan and said, "Isn't that what you're looking for, sir? If you can't trust me because of my appearance, I'll leave immediately after I give them to you." Shari smiled slyly and thought, "Yes, you must be surprised, because that's not why you were lashing out, apothecary." In the game, to prevent disaster for the next 3 days, the apothecary must live in the Count's house to feed Cassel with insomnia potions. However, Shari would be better off doing other quests to bring her closer to the end. Hale has many servants who could regularly give Cassel potions. Shari smiled and told Adam, "I'm not interested in getting paid for my work," trying to make a positive impression on Mr. She continued, "It would be an honor to help you, Mr." Adam was confused and said, "I instructed them to find an apothecary to solve the insomnia problem, but instead you brought me an insomnia potion?" This question is a little trick to surprise users. The story of burning the Nightmare Lord's curse was clearly told and shown in the tutorial. The players who did not miss the tutorial did not know this fact, so they were forced to look for a sleeping potion. According to the plot, the hero needs to prove his worth by hunting monsters. Since Shari was an apothecary, she did not have any abilities to hunt monsters. Shari turned to Adam. I heard a rumor about a convoy that was taking a criminal to our village. I heard that you need to keep the criminal from sleeping, no matter what it takes. She continued talking sweetly. I also know that many people suffer if he falls asleep. I want to use my potions to help people, even if it's not something huge. Suddenly, Adam Haley said, someone threw a potion at the criminal when he was being transported. It was you. A mark appeared next to Adam. Adam Haley temporarily eased suspicion on you. Haley said, okay, I'll leave this to you, follow me. But Shari stammered back, excuse me, I already gave you the potion, so now However, she could not agree when she saw the man's stern look at her. She had to come to terms with the fact that she would go and do all of Adam Haley's errands, regardless of their complexity. They went inside, and Adam said, from now on, all you have to do is keep the criminal awake for days. If you succeed, you will get 100,000 zlotys as payment. Adam gave Shari the key and said, this is the key to his cell. The criminal has very little chance of escaping as he is magically shackled. Please make sure you lock the door when you leave. Shari nodded her head, and Adam said, I'll be back. I'll have the headmaid prepare the tobacco room. Seeing a huge door in front of her, Shari said, finally I'm here. She began to think, so Cassel is behind this door? I've only seen him on videos of other players, but now I'm going to see him in person. I'm worried. I have to figure out how to get out of this game. However, Shari said, but as expected, he's just as handsome. Now that Shari saw him in person, his appearance was on a whole other level. Shari Azriel politely greeted the criminal. She approached the man slowly and very carefully, trying not to harm herself or him. She said, please forgive me. It will be difficult to feed you medicine with your head down. There is nothing you can do. You will have to be touched. Shari slowly took Cassel by the chin and was about to pour the potion into his mouth. However, Cassel suddenly seemed to go crazy and hit Shari. His voice was terribly scary. He said, get lost if you don't want to die on the spot. Shari just mentioned that Cassel can't stand being touched because he's been in pain because of it. He's also been hurting himself so he can't sleep. I just remembered that. Shari thought, due to the magical bonds, he can't use the force, but still, his slap reduced my health. I need him to be in a position to feed him. To be safe, Shari put on gloves. Gloves are an artifact that hides the presence of the user. Shari turned to Cassel, but the man did not respond to her words. A system message appeared above the man. Nightmare Lord, currently unable to move due to being in a trance state. Shari was frightened and thought, a state of trance? Did he use all his strength to hit me? Doesn't that mean he's about to fall asleep? Oh no, if that's the case, I need to give him medicine as soon as possible. The girl said in the most polite tone, sir, I'm sorry, but you must drink this potion according to the Earl's order. However, Shari suddenly became happy and shouted, but can you drink this potion yourself? Shari tried to get any kind of answer from Cassel to find out how he could more easily drink the potion. Shari offered to help Cassel and thought, there's no window of emotion to show that he doesn't trust me. Can that be taken as approval? Now the girl faced the condition of how to properly give the criminal medicine. It was desirable to come up with a plan as soon as possible. Suddenly, Shari said, I have it! She got the anesthesia monster. It's in air rifles when hunting monsters and pets so it can be used for medicine. Shari was proud of herself because she was sure that she had convinced Cassel. She slowly opened the man's mouth and shoved the anesthetic monster in there. She slowly began to pour the potion into Cassel, who no longer has the strength to resist. However, it seems that the man did not like this liquid, and he hastened to spit it out. Shari covered his mouth and said, do not blow! Wait a few minutes, please! Cassel tried to spit out the potion some more, but then swallowed it. The girl thought, I was so nervous that he wouldn't drink, so you won't scold me for just touching him for seconds? I even put on gloves. Great, I think it will be safe. Shari started backing away, saying, I'll check with you later when it's time for the next potion. Please rest. Suddenly, Shari heard the sound of a system message and turned around. Her eyes widened. She was almost speechless. The system message read, the Nightmare Lord has faint, murderous intent on you. The insomnia potion was activated, but only for an hour. Plus, Cassel BVV was very annoyed with Shari and wanted to kill her. Shari realized that Cassel's affection level wasn't the biggest problem right now. The potion only worked for 1 hour. For a game that created its own hacks in Haley's mansion, they can also make Cassel develop immunity to drugs. The higher the immunity, the faster the potion runs out. In the end, the drug will have no effect and Cassel will fall asleep. The problem is that the chance of him developing an immunity to the potion is random. It didn't matter how many potions Shari would make. She could be unlucky, and Cassel could become immune to the medicine. Now, not sure if the potion could stop the destruction of the world, but there were still quests that could save the world, so you had to complete them to gain influence on Cassel. The first for the quest: gain Adam's trust by hunting the darkness-devouring stone-on parasite monster. He is in Haley's mansion. To get the darkness essay, use it to repair the sword, Haley. This sword has been stuck for a long time, and no one has pulled it out yet. Now it is just a piece of metal. Actually, this sword was used by Haley to seal the monster with the dark attribute, Dark Devouring Centipede. Even after its owner died, this sword kept the monster sealed. After Cassel's arrival, the sword's lifespan was nearing its end, and the seal was weakened. The monster's thoughts began to creep out. Since the centipede is a parasitic species monster, it went into action by draining the blood from the people in the mansion to break free from the seal and regain its form. Monsters of this type can be conquered only with weapons with the attribute of light. This is especially true of bosses that can be destroyed with holy power weapons. Even though you lose blood after the quest, you have a chance to get the darkest essence if you have the monster. If you manage to repair the ancient sword by infusing it with all the dark essence, it will later become Adam's exclusive weapon, Adam's must-have sword, for the turning point at the end of the game. It will be very difficult to restore the sword because it requires dark essence. It is almost impossible for an ordinary player, but since I am with the moderators, it has a chance. I need it to work. Time was running out, and Shari ran to complete subquest to get out of this game as quickly as possible. To contact the moderators, she said chat window, Ari said with a smile on her face. Shari, you finally opened this chat window. Congratulations. Moderator said, she hasn't been killed by the main character yet? Our youngest has really good adjustment skills, but you... Shari cut them off and said, enough. She continued, people who are infected with the dark energy of the centipede, where are they? Moderator said, do you also do the subquest? We are touched. However, Shari screamed, hurry up, help me! Ari said, I found one of the maids to bring food to your room. Shari said, if this is my room, does that mean I have to hurry if I want to catch her like this? Look for someone closer. Shari quickly ran to her room through the window. The maid was walking down the corridor and shouting, hey, you're nothing! Hurry up and eat this! Go here now, I said it! She continued, I know you're just sitting in your room doing nothing but your potion. Shari was lying on the floor and said, I was so excited when I was making the potion, so I need a rest, don't I? The maid gritted her teeth and threw away the moldy, stale bread with the words, eat. His lordship has ordered us to give you food that suits you. Shari snorted and muttered, what's that rotten bread? Is it even edible? The maid bared her sharp teeth and shouted, why aren't you eating? Are you taking my words seriously? The woman opened her arms and with a terrible scream attacked Shari, saying, if you don't eat this, then I will eat you, do you understand me? Shari took out a sunlight-drenched potion from her pocket and quietly said, now. The woman started grimacing, and the system displayed a notification. You have just used a sunlight-infused potion to destroy the first level of the Dark Devouring Centipede. The system gave a reward for the kill, namely one dark entity of the maid. Shari laughed and said, I was wondering if a potion with a light attribute as a weapon could work on them. I'm glad it did. I was destroying a centipede, so I'm sure she'll regain consciousness. There were 17 seconds left on the timer until Cassel fell asleep, so he had to hurry. Shari then continued to do this over and over. She kept visiting Cassel to give him the insomnia potion before the previous potion wore off. At the same time, the Shari constantly got rid of the centipede-absorbed people. There were essences in her hands. Shari looked at them and said, I collected the essences of darkness that I got from catching the absorbed, so I can put them into the ancient sword. Nadal's sword could only be refilled once a day, so it created some difficulties for Shari. She couldn't believe that she had to do this hard work for 3 days. It was very tiring. By the way, every time Shari fed her husband potions, he had a system message about murderous intentions. Even though Shari had no friendly intentions towards Cassel, she had to figure out a way to reduce his intent if she wanted to complete this game and survive. Suddenly, Shari said, Sir, I know you must hate me for making you drink potions. "Can I give you a power potion so you can drink it yourself?" She continued, "Nothing suspicious, I swear. I'm only doing this out of respect for you. I'll give it to you specifically, I promise, Lord." After feeding the boy high-quality potions, Shari was barely able to reduce his intentions towards her. The woman could continue to collect dark entities to continue the game. One day the girl came into the room to ask her husband to drink an insomnia potion. However, Cassel was not there. Suddenly, someone grabbed the girl by the head, twisted her arms, and threw her to the floor. Cassel was sitting on Shari, pressing her throat to the floor more and more, and saying to her slowly but very clearly, "You? I asked who you are." Shari felt herself start to suffocate from the severe pain in her neck. Cassel saw this and said, "Numo, let's find out who you are before I break your neck." Shari felt even stronger pain. Her health was falling, and her voice dropped to a heavy hoarseness as the pain increased. Of course, the apothecary understood that she could not die at Cassel's hands, because then she would not return to Dover. But her strength was not enough to resist this man. Suddenly, Shari remembered the anesthetic in her pocket. However, in order to inject the anesthetic, it was necessary to find a certain area of skin, and Cassel is percent muscle. There was nowhere to even stick a needle. Sticking a needle is a little cruel to the main character, but without it, Shari will not be able to complete the game and will die in both worlds. Wasting no time, the girl took out a needle and stuck it in the boy's leg with the thought, "Sorry, boy." Cassel's hands suddenly loosened and let go of Shari's neck. Cassel didn't feel pain, but he felt as if someone had pinched him. He stopped to check what was the matter. The Nightmare Lord looked at the girl's clenched right hand and asked, "What's in the right hand?" Shari couldn't fall for something so stupid. She had to make something up. Suddenly, the girl took out a magical flower from her pocket and said, "What? What are you talking about? I don't understand you, sir." Cassel seemed to believe in this scam, so he simply nodded his head. Shari sat down against the wall and began to gulp air. She was gasping for air from what she had just been through. However, the man did not let her enjoy peace for long, so he approached her. He quickly took her by the hood and said, "Are you alone? Is there anyone else?" Shari remembered Alam's words. He asked the same thing as soon as the apothecary entered the hall. The girl panicked and said, "Why are you doing this? I'm innocent." Cassel smiled and replied, "You were suspicious from the beginning. You talk to me and don't leave. Usually when they see me for the first time, they are afraid." Shari almost fainted from fear because she understood that Cassel was just a fool. She thought, "Who would even look at such a fat fool? This is just ridiculous. Besides, you pulled out the handcuffs only because you drank the power potion. Crazy, unrealistically strong." Cassel asked again, "I think you know who I am. Are you sure, Apothecary Haley?" Shari tried to make a joke, so she said, "Well, the Count said there was a precious guest from the capital." Suddenly, Cassel began to pull the girl by the hood, demanding that she take it off in front of him. Due to the spell cast by Shari, Cassel could not see her face and beauty for his own sake. The man pulled even harder with the words, "If you don't show me, I won't let you go." Shari screamed, "It's because of the scars. I killed a lot in childhood, so I have scars. It didn't heal because it wasn't healed on time. If I'm careful, then it can heal." Shari said, "If you don't mind, I will take off and show you my face without charms." Suddenly, the girl saw the sleep timer, so she had to drink the potion immediately because there were only seconds left. Cassel laughed. He pulled Shari's hand from her head, and the girl was very frightened. He stood up and asked, "What did you feel when I kissed you?" "The Nightmare Lord doubts your words," system message appeared near Cassel. Shari got a little angry and said, "Of course I didn't have enough oxygen. I felt helpless. I was in pain." Suddenly, Shari thought, "Just don't say that he was suffocating from the potion I gave him with the gun. Was this his revenge?" Of course, the girl was outraged by this method of murder, but she tried to justify the man by saying that he was really hurt. Afterwards, she said, "Alk, but you won't die from the potion. I almost went to the other world, only seconds." Cassel laughed and said, "That's why I choked you for seconds." Shari screamed, "Don't lie, what seconds?" He said, "Huh? Well, shall we check again or?" Shari immediately made a cute face and agreed with the man. The girl turned around and left the room with the thought, "To threaten with force. How terrible he is." Suddenly, the man asked to give it back. Shari came back not understanding what to give, and Cassel said, "Insomnia potion and strength. Give everything you have." The girl looked at the man in surprise and asked, "Are you kidding?" Of course it wasn't a joke. Shari was able to escape in exchange for a potion of strength and insomnia. The girl ran to get the medicine and later brought it to her husband. The potion was surprisingly small, so the man began to shake the girl upside down trying to get more potion. Shari restrained herself from yelling at Cassel. Instead, she just cursed him mentally. However, when she endured everything, she smiled a little and thought, "Do you think I gave you everything?" Aha, what's up? The item is the moderator's cloak. The number of items that can be stored by a non-user is only its owner can view the inventory. Shari wasn't thrilled with the inventory, of course, but it worked perfectly, and that was enough. This cloak helped the girl escape from Cassel unscathed. However, now that the boy could drink the potion on his own, Shari could focus on additional quests to progress the game. Shari turned to the chandelier with which she had many questions. She did not understand what this thing was for at all. Moderator Sarah replied, "This item can be used to catch the boss." Shari was very surprised at that use of the item, as she had never seen other players use it in their games before. Medepator Jinu replied, "No one found this item before you, so they didn't use it." Serp said, "If you look carefully at the map, you can find it. Stupid players." Shari was muttering something else to herself until the butler interrupted her and asked, "Hey, what were you talking to yourself about?" From the side, it looked like the girl was putting a curse on the estate, but she replied, "Huh? Nothing. I was looking for a living room here." The butler looked at the girl in disbelief. Later, he waved his hand and said, "Dear, I just have something to tell you. I'll show you around. Let's go." Shari thanked her, but her mind was on the fact that the butler was busy. Why would he call her then? However, the girl tried not to think much about it, but simply followed the butler, who suddenly turned around. He quietly said, "Tomorrow at midnight, go to the back of the central staircase and bring all the insomnia potions. If you give them back, I will give you gold." The evil magicians wish for a catastrophe to release the sealed body, all because the catastrophe releases demonic energy that resurrects monsters. Because of V, the player and the apothecary, who prevent the disaster, try to expel him from the estate. But under normal conditions, such a proposal should come right before the disaster. Shari could not concentrate on her thoughts. Everything was scattered. There were still 3 days before the disaster. It was too early for the potion. Shari did not understand what was happening. The butler walked down the corridor and asked, "Are you doing what the Count asked? How much insomnia potion is left?" There was no time in the lair to go with the butler, but she could not ignore him. Shari decided to set her conditions, so she said, If I follow the Count's order, I will get 100,000 gold, and you offer 50,000. It's not enough." The man began to seethe and get angry. The man turned to her and shouted, "Your greed is growing! Are you giving up the money you can't get even by working all your life?" Shari didn't answer, so the butler said, "Are you ignoring me? A scumbag like you is pretty easy to kill." The girl exhaled heavily and thought, as expected, he's crazy. The man wanted to say something else about Shari, but he was interrupted by, "Ah, no, thanks for the time." The butler opened the door for the girl, and with a sly mistake said, "Okay, that's all. I won't kill you now." He continued, "But you better not go against orders. This time you better not try your luck, apothecary." The girl turned her head and saw a lot of people gathered in one place. Of course, this surprised Shari, and she thought about how to avoid conflict with them. She looked at the butler and thought, not just one absorbed, but an assistant too. However, she remembered that their death is equal to her life, so she became determined. Taking out a tranquilizer from her pocket, she said, "I'm pretty good at it." The girl charged the tranquilizer in the morning for such cases, so there were no problems in dividing it among everyone around. These people were like a game for her. It was very easy to defeat them. A potion of light fell on the eyes and clothes of the absorbed and forced their dark essences to emerge from them. Shari lowered the tranquilizer and said, "It's been a while since I last used the force. Is that enough to get rid of them?" The system began to reward Shari with essences of darkness, again and again. Shari thought about where the butler was, but suddenly, unknown men ran into the room. One of them shouted, "This criminal attacked Haley's servant. Get her immediately!" Shari turned around and mentally shouted, "Where is Adam here? Dvoretsky is also with them?" Adam slowly approached and asked, "Did you really attack the people of Haley's house?" Shari should have passed out as soon as they entered. At this rate, she was really going to be accused of witchcraft. She tried to justify herself, but Adam had serious doubts about Shari. Suddenly, the girl noticed an unknown person next to Adam. Above his head was written, "Butler Frank Hampton." This person was closer to Adam. Suddenly, the butler shouted, "What's a misunderstanding? She is trying to discredit the family." Adam calmly said, "Everyone is quiet. First, I would like to know what happened. Explain." But how to explain what just happened? Shari was confused and was speechless for a few seconds. One of the servants shouted, "Count as expected! This girl is slamming the family!" And Shari screamed, "Maid, yeah!" She continued, About noon, a maid came into my room and bought a sleeping potion. Adam asked curiously, "A maid?" Shari nodded her head and continued, "Yes, they recently bought me a sleeping potion because they said that quite a few people suffer from insomnia due to the fear of the prisoner." Then she said, "But I made a mistake in the amount of potion I gave, so I came here and saw that everyone was sleeping." She continued, "They must have mixed the potion with our food. That's why they fell asleep so quickly. It seems to have worked well. Please trust me." One of the count's subordinates said, "Adam, I think it's right. All the workers are alive and sleeping, and there is no external damage either." The second butler suddenly stepped forward. Looking at the girl, he said, "Why don't you call the knights? Did you stay among the unconscious?" Shari replied, "It happened because of a potion that I made, so I was looking for a solution." Adam looked into Shari's eyes and believed her. In addition, Shari made a cute facial expression that was impossible not to believe. Adam asked them to let him go, and the servants pushed their swords aside. The woman began to bow as low as she could in gratitude. Shari thought that his butlers would frame the girl, and she would die in agony, but Adam believed her. When Shari wanted to leave, as if on business, she was stopped. Adam asked, "Underpaid?" Shari replied, "What do you mean?" Shari thought, "Huh? It can't be. He didn't propose it himself. It was Adam?" Adam repeated his question. "I'm asking if the remuneration for your work is not too low." Shari didn't understand what this question was about, so she just ignored Adam.